Hey guys, there's been an update on the Pope. What does this latest news from the Vatican actually mean? So the Pope's been in hospital for 17 days now. He's got a double pneumonia. And what we're hearing from the Vatican is that he had 2 acute respiratory crises today and has been put back on non-invasive ventilation. So people have heard of a ventilator, which is basically a machine that breathes for you by pushing air into your lungs through a tube that's inside your lungs. And that's why it's called invasive mechanical ventilation. But there's also something called non-invasive mechanical ventilation, and that's what we often call BiPAP or bi-level positive airway pressure, which is a mask that effectively pushes air in to assist your lungs when you're still able to breathe on your own, but taking the pressure off your lungs to make it easier on you. We also know that he has a lot of secretions in there, and they actually had to do what's called a bronchoscopy or put in a camera on 2 occasions to remove those secretions. And conventionally, we don't like putting people with a lot of secretions on that BiPAP mask because all that pressure makes it hard to clear those secretions, and it's really important to clear those secretions when you have a pneumonia. What that tells me is that they're probably doing everything they can to prevent him from needing to be on a ventilator.
That is Dr. Samir Gupta, a familiar face and frequent guest here on CBC News Network with an update on the Pope's latest condition, and he joins us now. A tremendous amount of detail, actually, from the Vatican almost daily about the Pope, and you went through their latest update. What does that tell you as a respirologist about the state of the Pope's recovery?
Yeah, definitely some red flags there, Ian. We heard on Friday that he had vomited, and they referred to an aspiration event. And that means that a little bit of that vomit, unfortunately, ended up in his lungs. And you can imagine that the contents of the stomach are very acidic. So that if you do aspirate some of that content, it's very irritating and it causes a lot of inflammation in the lungs. And that was, I think, the beginning of this latest worsening, where he did need some of this non-invasive ventilation, as I described, this mask that supports your ventilation. It seems to have improved to an extent. And then today, again, he's required it, and he has all of these secretions. If I think about this just in terms of, our typical parameters for using that non-invasive ventilation, we don't like to use it in people who are at risk of aspiration because it only increases that risk even more. We also don't like to use it in people with lots of secretions for the reasons I said in the video. It pushes the secretions down. So the fact that they're using it really tells me that they're probably doing everything they can to prevent the need to put him on a ventilator, to actually put the tube in and put him on the machine.
So I'm going to ask some very simple, perhaps naive questions, especially to a respirologist, so bear with me. This is a plan here to try to get as much or get extra oxygen into his lungs, presumably. That's what they're trying to do?
Yeah, so what this mask does is, the person is still breathing on their own, but as you take the breath in, the mask will push air in so that you're doing less of the work. The machine, through the mask, is doing some of that work for you. And that gives you a rest. It also enables a bigger, deeper breath. And what that allows you to do is to get rid of more of your carbon dioxide and to get more oxygen into your body, which is effectively the function of the lungs. So this mask enables you to do that better and to do that with less effort as your own respiratory system is tiring out.
And pneumonia, which we know he is dealing with, it can be very serious, particularly for older people. He is 88, particularly for older people who have complications, including in his case, he had part of a lung removed when he was young. And so when we hear about the pneumonia, when you hear about how long he's been in hospital, how concerning is that?
It is. And, it's just that things add up. Ian, as you spend more time in hospital, I think it's been 17 days. We heard about the bronchitis, then the pneumonia, then the double pneumonia, multiple different organisms there, multiple different antibiotics have been tried, high levels of oxygen, now the aspiration, now the non-invasive ventilation. So it's just getting more and more critically ill and sort of climbing that ladder where the concern level and the illness level is increasing. And certainly to the point where it sounds like they're doing everything that they can do short of the ultimate, which is putting him on a ventilator. And it sort of raises a question too as to whether he would want to be on a ventilator. And this is, it becomes very interesting because, from my perspective, we deal with this all the time where, there's the science part and then there's the religion and your beliefs. But here you have, the head of the Catholic Church, and where does that intersect, and how are those decisions being made on what's appropriate in terms of how extreme the support should be?
And best case scenario for a moment, is the hope here that by helping him breathe, that presumably there are other courses of action they're taking, antibiotics perhaps, that over time his body with this assistance will be able to fight the infection and he'll be able to heal? That's what they're hoping for, presumably?
Very much so, Ian. It really, what we do is we temporize. We keep the person alive while their body fights off the infection. And all of these are measures to do that, whether it's the antibiotics, whether it's this mask that's pushing air, the oxygen that's being delivered, even the bronchoscopy, that process where we go in with a camera and we clean out the lungs. It's just prolonging, increasing his chances to fight this off, keeping him going while his body fights this off. And that's what we do. And we won't know, to what extent he'll be able to fight this off, whether he turns the corner. This will really be, hopefully we'll be getting frequent updates, but really will be in the next few days that we'll understand sort of, is he headed towards more, does he need that ventilator? And is that going to be done? Or is he turning the corner and needs less and less of this non-invasive ventilation?
It's always nice to get your guidance and counsel on all kinds of medical issues, but particularly when it comes to your expertise, respirologist, perfect on note for helping us with this. Dr. Gupta, thank you very much.
Yes, my pleasure, Ian.